People refer to me as Mr. Accountability. You are so much that way. You've even categorized excuses. You have 6 categories of excuses: fear, time, knowledge, circumstances, ego, and scarcity.
Yes.
Let's talk about those a little bit, because I like people to learn from these podcasts, and then we'll talk some more about other things. But talk about fear as a category of excuse, because you say it's based on, obviously, apprehension and anxiety.
Sure. I think fear comes from another place. It comes from lack of confidence, lack of resources, things like that. But when I look at fear, now, I'm not talking about standing on a cliff, of course,
right,
Phil, but when I talk about fear, most of us are scared of something that millions of people have already done. So there's typically, a prerequisite for doing what we're scared of doing. So fear is often false. It really is. And if it isn't challenging us physically and it doesn't endanger us, then it isn't fear, it's calculated risk.
Mm-hmm. Monsters live in the dark. I've asked people a lot of times what scares them the most, and it's interesting. It's like, if I get out of my comfort zone and say I succeed, say I decide I'm going to set a goal and I'm going to get out here and jack my income 30%. What am I going to do next month? Now they feel the pressure to keep it up.
Right.
And so they think, okay, if I do that, now everybody's going to expect me to keep it up. I put pressure on myself. It would be so much easier to just stay in my comfort zone and rock along. But then I'm miserable if I do that. That's like doing the 3rd grade over every year.
Right. It's interesting. When I go to bars, I see that exact thing, and I have that same thought to myself. They raised the money. They opened the business. They hired the people. They put everything together, but they can't get to that next step because they're scared of where do they go from there? How do they take? But it's a false fear, Phil. It isn't based in any kind of reality. So fear it's not easy to tell somebody to push it aside, for sure, because it's there and they feel it. But unless it's physical, to me, I always move them to the premise of calculated risk, not fear. And when you're in a dark room, you have nothing to calculate, do you? That's why that monster's in the dark.
And it's not about being reckless. It's about taking calculated risk. I'm not going to throw away everything and go try out for the NBA. That's reckless. I'm not going to make it in the NBA. You got to be realistic about it.
I remember when I started my television show and I was sitting in the offices of the network and I told them about bar sciences, Phil. And they said, what are a couple of bar sciences? So I threw a couple out there. And the show was booked. And then on the drive home, I got a TV show picked up, and I got so many sciences. Can I take this to 3 episodes? Can I take it to 5? Can I take it to 10? So I was worried. Okay, I got the opportunity. Can I take it that far? And well, obviously I did. But in the early days, that was a huge fear that I had. But I have to put that aside and just go to work every day and let the progress happen.